Okay, everybody. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
It's my pleasure to again to invite DSAB staff and a couple of counselors that are on that committee to join us today to update us and tell us a little bit about, and I think we're going to be talking a lot about the homelessness situation. So we have Catherine Matheson, who is the CAO of DSAB. And we have Marianne Zadra, who's been on before with us, and her title is Communications and Executive Coordinator for DSAB, District of Nipissing
Social Services Administration Board.
Yeah, that's a long title.
Yeah, it is.
So you don't pronounce the end there, do you?
No, and there are other DSABs, District Social Services Administration Board. That's really what the acronym is. Nipissing
Okay.
identifies our region. There's Thunder Bay. There's a whole bunch of them.
Okay, so we also have Rhiannon Fennell, homelessness program coordinator, and we have Donna Mayer as well. I don't know what your title is, Donna.
Manager of project development.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna, Marianne, if you'd like to get started, and we also have Chris Main.
Sorry.
Yes, the frequent guest with Living Fit Women 10. Go ahead, Marianne.
Okay, I'll start sharing the screen.
And Mark, our chair is going to kick us off. So
Yeah,
I'll Mark.
Okay.
So Harriet, thanks for the introduction to DSAB, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to go over the actual governance, so that your members have a full understanding of the size of DSAB and what's entailed. I can tell you personally that this has almost become a full-time job because it's so involved. So just to give you an idea, the service area that DSAB is involved with, of course, the population in our region is about 85,000 people. The square kilometers, it's 7,000 kilometers. There are 11 municipalities plus 2 First Nations and 2 territories without municipal organization. They're called TUMOs. Those 2 areas are Nipissing North and South. And the municipalities involved in the board of DSAB are the City of North Bay, West Nipissing, South Algonquin, believe it or not, East Ferris, Temagami, Mattawa, Bonfield, Chisholm, Calvin, Matawan, and also Papineau, Cameron. So when you look at the number of municipalities involved in that, it gives you some kind of an idea of what's involved in the whole process. And as chair, I've always tried to be fair with the region. It can be a bit of a difficult task when you recognize the size of the City of North Bay and the fact that we're trying to provide services to the full region. So the DSAB itself has a 12-member board of elected officials. And it actually operates under the DSAB Act. It doesn't operate under the Municipal Act, and that's a bit of a problem at times with elected officials. So the representation, which I talked about earlier on, 6 members from the City of North Bay, 1 member each for South Algonquin, West Nipissing, East Ferris, Temagami, and of course the unorganized territories, both North and South. And there's 1 member from the Eastern Cluster, which is the town of Mattawa, Township of Bonfield, Kelvin, Chisholm, Matawan, and again, Papineau, Camera. And the board itself, the members meet once a month, except for July and August. There are a number of committees inside the board itself, a community services committee. There's a finance and admin committee, and then of course NDHC, which is the housing committee. So those committees meet if required every month. And again, as I mentioned, the governance operates under the DSAB bylaws and is not affected by the Municipal Act per se. So I'm going to turn it over to Catherine at this point, and she's going to talk about strategic plans. Go ahead, Catherine.
Great, thank you, Mark. So I know you want to talk a lot about homelessness today, so I'm going to run through, as Mark indicated, it's a big organization and there's a lot of different functions. So I'm going to touch on some of that before we get to homelessness. So the last board that we had developed a 20-year strategic plan with a vision in 20 years out. And it sounds a little bit odd at first when you think about a vision for 20 years, but the things we do in the DSAB are systematic and they're community-wide, and it takes time to make change. So there's 4 major goals that they have: maximizing the impact on communities and individuals, removing the barriers to service that we know exist, seamless access, making it easy for people to get and navigate the systems, and then always as an organization to continuously improve and plan and learn and grow. So those are the 4 strategic long-term goals that will be in place for 20 years. And each time a board elects and comes into power, they'll set their priorities. So this board is now just setting its priorities for its term, but I can let you know that so far the information we've gathered is housing and homelessness is absolutely #1. So this board is right in line, as was the last one, and moving this forward. So we'll move to the next slide. These are the areas that we cover as an organization. So Ontario Works and financial services for individuals in need, children's services, which is your childcare system, paramedic services, which is your 911, EMS, and housing services, which we'll talk more about. So we are mandated by the province to deliver these services. We do not have an option. We have to deliver them. Harriet, you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
I just wanted to ask if that strategic plan is within the overall strategic plan for the city.
Yeah, so you have half the representation on the DSAB is made up of elected officials from North Bay. So their voice is clearly heard and aligning with the work that they do. But as Mark indicated, we are a district board. So there's 6 representatives from across the district. So their needs are also in line with what we do at the DSAB. So it's not just a North Bay focused organization. It's representing North Bay Human Services, but we definitely have to look after Temagamis and Mattawas and everybody else as well. So yeah. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So I'm just going to touch on this. You'll get a copy of the presentation if you want to read the details, but basically just to let you know that there are about 2,000 cases for Ontario Works, which is what we used to call welfare in the system last 20 years ago. So this system provides employment support to get to employment, to get off of social services, and also to provide for their primary needs. You'll hear a lot about it in the news that Ontario Works has not had an increase in the income that it provides to low-income people for many, many years. Those that get onto long-term disability, those that cannot work, that are on the system for their life, they've had some increases in income over the last several years. So there's a bit of a controversy going on right now, provincially relative to that decision making. But definitely our staff work at City Hall. They also work in some satellite offices in Mattawa and West Nipissing, and they provide social services frontline service face-to-face for individuals in need of income. So that's that particular service. We'll move on. Early years in childcare, you're hearing a lot probably about the national childcare program that the federal government has been introducing. Ontario signed on to it, the last province to sign on, but they've signed on, and now we are implementing national childcare here in Nipissing District. So we work with a number of licensed childcare services, so they need to be licensed, and they're audited by our team, goes out and audits to make sure that they're in compliance with the number of staff that they're providing, the safety, the health for the individuals, the children that are there, and the fee subsidies, because we subsidize the fees for families that are accessing childcare. And you can see in the very bottom here, I'll just point to the last little bullet down here, 53% of childcare fee reduction has been put in place as of December 31st, 2022. So we're implementing the National Childcare Program. And the last thing I'll say about childcare is that there's not enough workers to provide all the services that are promised by the government right now. So while we're saying we have a national childcare program, right, $10, et cetera, there's not enough staff to deliver the demand for services. So we're trying to constantly, build up more supply of workers and to encourage communities to bring forward more ideas on how to deliver childcare in their communities. So that's some of the pressures on early years in childcare. We'll go to the next slide. Paramedic services. We were one of the last organizations to bring paramedic services in-house. So this board last term made a decision to do an analysis to see if it was worthwhile to bring the services inside direct delivery by DSAB, or to continue contracting to North Bay Regional Health Center and Mattawa and others to Temagami to deliver the services for us. They made that decision, and it's a big endeavor. It's not something that can be done overnight, but we did manage to transition 3 collective bargaining agreements and all the workers across the district into direct delivery. So we do provide that service directly now, so we're not contracting it out, which is really important to the board because they want to make sure that the services meet their strategic plan and that we're delivering them in the way in which the community requires. Basically, what's happening in this field right now, the big one is community paramedicine. So individuals in the community that are in need of going into long-term care can get access to community paramedics to come into their home, to be on a roster of case management, to have frequent visits, to make sure that their health is stabilized as much as can be, and to keep them in their homes as long as possible. So that's one of the up and coming services we're delivering, and it's being in place right now. But basically to let you know that service demand is increasing across the district. And so we're always constantly having to keep an eye on this one to make sure we're delivering within the requirements of the province for time and effectively providing good quality service. So we'll go to the next slide. Housing services, where your interest today is going to be. This one here, we would have presented to you this the last time we presented, but basically the message here is that there's a large continuum across the spectrum with respect to where people are in housing. We know that there's homelessness that exists everywhere in the country. We know that we are providing now through the board emergency shelter services at Chippewa. We are also providing transitional housing at Chippewa and Northern Pines. And we provide subsidized affordable rental housing in the community, and we support individuals to get affordable home ownership. That's where the work of the DSAB stops. The market rental and the market home ownership is outside of our mandate. So Donna will talk more about how we develop housing when she gets to her slide, and Rhea will talk a little bit more about some of the other services. So we'll go along. This is, I think, the last slide. We're getting close to the last slide I have for you. This one just talks about Northern Pines, which is on Chippewa Street, as you know. There were 3 phases being developed, primarily funded in capital by the provincial government. So we did very, very well to get capital funding. And as of in the last month was a great announcement that we're getting almost all of our funding from the province to deliver services there. So really a very minimal impact on the cost to the taxpayer, but basically servicing a very important need. So if you remember on that spectrum, on the left-hand side was about encampments, and then there was homelessness. So the low barrier shelter was opened a couple of years ago, just when pandemic hit, just because there was no shelter for men in the community. So that was opened up quite quickly. Then we started getting into investing into transitional housing, which is a more important service for the long-term sustainability of individuals' health and well-being. So that transitional supportive housing opened on November 2021. There are 16 individuals that are living in their own units at Chippewa Drive or Street and in that Northern Pines complex. The other 2 phases are basically completed. We're just waiting for an elevator fix, but that's 20 units and 24 units in total. Those are varying levels of care. So we're trying to provide a continuum of services there from individuals that have high needs, which is going to come in phase 3, to those that are very independent in phase 2 with their own bachelor apartments. And then in phase 1, where we are right now with some supportive transitional housing. So that's what's happening at Northern Pines. And we're still trying to work with our healthcare partners to bring services inside for those that have mental health and addictions needs as well. I think maybe the next slide might be going, oh, one more from me. This is really just to talk about some of the work, a lot of the work that the 2 chairs are doing. So Chris is the chair of the Nipissing District Housing Corporation, which is a large land owner and provider of services in the Nipissing District. So we have a number of social housing units that we deliver directly, and that's one of our buildings you can see on the screen here. And then we also, through the DSAB, deliver some affordable housing programs for rent subsidy I mentioned earlier, and some portable housing benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So really trying to provide as much variety and trying to get people into some stabilized housing, and that's what's happening on that front. So I'll stop there if you have any questions, and then we'll jump into, we'll go to Rhea. She's going to get into the details of the program, so maybe we'll just jump to her right now, and then we'll come back at the end, Harriet, for some questions. So,
Sure.
okay.
That's fine. I do have a question about the
sure.
Northern Pine shelter.
Sure.
Is it closed right now or
No, it's open. Yeah.
it's open?
The Low-Bear shelter is open. Yeah, it's open
Okay.
For the 8 till 8 in the morning. Yeah.
All right, but the part of it was a warming center, right?
Yeah, that's until the end of April. Well, I guess we're past that now, so it's close.
Yeah. So okay, so the people who were using that as a warming center, are they accommodated there as well?
No, so the warming center would be complete now. So that service was just for the winter months. So that was run by the Gathering Place. So Dennis Chippa,
Yeah.
I forget his last name.
So where would those people go? I'm just curious about.
Yeah, so well then we'll get into Rhea's presentation and she'll start to show you how
Okay.
to support them in the
Okay.
community. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rhea.
Okay, so this really speaks to what's happening in the community right now to answer some of your questions about what's happening for homelessness. So Coordinated Access Nipissing is a partnership between 9 community agencies, including the DSAB, that provide access points for individuals and households experiencing homelessness across the district of Nipissing. We've created a by name list of those individuals and households who are homeless so that we can collaborate and use resources efficiently and effectively and prioritize how we'll help those on the list. Using a homelessness information management system called HIFIS, which stands for Homeless Individual and Families Information System, which is an information management system that is sponsored federally, so it exists right across the country. Can partner agencies collaborate and follow individuals from homelessness to home, acquire the data that will help in planning for the future. Each household is assessed for immediate and long-term needs, and the CAN team, comprised of frontline workers from each of the agencies, meet weekly and work together to develop a housing action plan. The idea behind coordinated access is that we move away from crisis management and emergency shelter towards finding homes for people, and that's what we are working towards at this time. Next slide. So Built for Zero. As a district, we were accepted as a Built for Zero community in June of 2022, and we're now committed to using a structured, supportive, and data-driven approach that focuses on optimizing local homelessness systems, accelerating the adoption of proven practices, and driving continuous improvement. We have a goal and a commitment to reach something called functional zero by the end of 2025. And functional zero means that we reach an end to homelessness where the community has sufficient services, housing, and shelter beds for anyone who needs them, and a systemic response to prevent homelessness. So working towards a point where if someone is experiencing homelessness, there are options in the community for them at whatever place they're at in their own wellness or recovery. And finally, in addition to housing options, the DSAB can offer funding that's designed to keep people in their homes or help them acquire their first home. Movement anywhere along the housing continuum that you saw the graphic for earlier in the presentation can open housing bottlenecks and prevent more households from experiencing homelessness. The understanding is that people can move both directions on the housing continuum, and it almost can be circular when you think about people who are getting older and maybe moving into supported housing themselves. It all opens up options for other people along the continuum.
So as manager of project development. That's actually mostly new affordable housing development. So that's what my role is at the DSAB, is to help facilitate new housing development. The way the DSAB does it primarily is by opening up options or helping people identify the funding sources from upper levels of government. And there's plenty of money up there as compared to what the DSAB has. So we advocate, or the DSAB board advocates primarily with the upper levels of government to access these funds and make them the programs applicable for Northern Ontario. So we leverage local funds also with our own assets. So we sold an office building, and the board acquired a site, a school site, renovated it, divided it in half, and sold part of it to generate more funds. So there's a lot of creativity and ingenuity at the board level to create funds for housing. And then we help facilitate housing development. In the case of Northern Pines, we do own that the building and access provincial funds and federal funds to create that housing. Within the NDHC, Nipissing District Housing Corporation portfolio, we also acquire properties when opportunities arise. So with Mackay Homes was a former seniors project run by a nonprofit group. They decided to retire and wanted to keep the stock affordable and available in the community. So NDHC acquired it, and we're renovating it because it was built in the 1960s. We also act as the conduit for provincial funding and occasionally federal funding to create shovel-ready projects. And we do that by helping developers, whether that's nonprofit developers, co-ops, or private sector, to develop housing. So right now we've got, for instance, a need and demand study, a proposal call out to create a need and demand study so that we have up-to-date data to demonstrate the need and demand for affordable housing in the Nipissing District. Once that report is complete, that will be shared with all our community partners to help inspire and point the right direction for where the greatest need is for permanent affordable housing. DSAB has some constraints because we're not a municipality, so we don't have the same ability to develop, which is why we have NDHC. NDHC is able to develop affordable housing. That's a quick run through of our role in affordable housing development.
Okay, so that concludes the meat of the presentation, but we're anxious to receive your questions.
It's very complex.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. There's a lot going on there. I'd have to go through the slides again because I couldn't get it all. But I'm wondering if there are any questions from our membership, and they think oops, we're going to start with Chris. Okay. And then Bonnie, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question for Donna. If you know, Water's Edge down on Lakeshore Drive is run by NDHC. Did we build that or did we buy that? It was as a fully constructed building, and that was whatever happened was years ago. But do you remember the history on that one?
I actually don't know the history, but I'm pretty sure that was a constructed project by NDHC back in the day, but I really don't know. Sorry.
Okay, I just, to see it, I just was curious. Okay, thank you. Okay, that was my question, Harriet. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm not a member of Living Fit yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I thought Water's Edge was a seniors privately owned resident. That's what I thought.
Water's Edge is, Edgewater is the.
It's okay.
Edgewater.
Water's Edge. Okay, it's Edgewater. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, go ahead, Bonnie. You're muted, Bonnie.
Does the public have a different perception when we're walking around, we see homeless people and we just keep ragging about it? You guys have this whole system in place. So are we just seeing a lot of times people that really are refusing help, they want to be on the street. And do you have stats on how many people you see that, you know, really, they might go for a meal or for a cold night, but they generally just want to live on the street? Because I think that you guys are doing a suburb job, but I think what we see a lot of times are the people that choose to be out there. So I'm thinking there's a disconnect between what we see and what you guys are doing.
So Harriet, if you want, I can kind of fill in some of the blanks for Bonnie. I can
Go
tell
ahead.
you, Bonnie, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah. So Bonnie, I was on the street during the winter, spent a fair length of time trying to understand what was transpiring on our streets. And you're absolutely right. There's a disconnect between those that are homeless on the street and the services that are provided. And there are many services that DSAB provide. The general consensus that I gathered while talking to these people was the disconnect was really information. So street people have a habit of congregating together. They all talk about what the available services are. And the general consensus in listening to them was that the low barrier shelter was full. So we have a system in place with respect to the low barrier shelter that if in fact it is full, then those people are transported and housed in hotels. But many of them, quite frankly, don't know where they're going the next hour. They don't understand the danger they're in with respect to 35 below zero weather on the streets of North Bay. And I witnessed that behind the museum, where an individual actually, if we hadn't called EMS, I'm sure that individual would have died at that particular spot. And the sad part of it is that this is going on not only in North Bay. I mean, our team of individuals just came back from an AMO meetings in Toronto last week that really opened my eyes with respect to what's transpiring in the province. And this was a provincial initiative. And quite frankly, it's been indicated as a mitigated disaster, the housing situation. And it's probably the single most prevalent issue, I think, from a political standpoint and from community standpoints that needs to be rectified. And I know we are on the leading edge of what needs to take place when you look at Northern Pines and how it operates. And we've been going through a long and very tedious process to lobby both provincial and federal governments to find the money to provide the services. And I can tell you, this has been extremely difficult. But to get back to your overall question, there's definitely a disconnect. I believe that we need 24/7 outreach workers on the streets of North Bay continuously. There is no one really providing that support. I'll be very, very honest with you. There are 3 volunteer individuals that have been working the streets without compensation on their own through the winter months, trying to help these people, and I've witnessed it. How we get to that point really revolves around the service providers in North Bay, and there are many of them. We've recognized that in the community and safety wellness plan, 137 contact points in our community, but no one works after 4 o'clock. So that's kind of an overview from my viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. So my question too, part of it was, do you see part of the homeless population that refuses any care? Would rather sleep in a tent. They don't really want to be part of any kind of established group. Like, do you have stats on that?
That's what I was wondering. If you have a, what percentage would that be? I'm just assuming it's not a huge number.
I can't speak to that if people would
Go ahead,
like.
Rhea.
So the way that coordinated access works and with the by name list, we are tracking the individuals who are experiencing homelessness across the district. We do have a group that meets every Friday that is made up of outreach providers from across the district. 3 different agencies, specifically True Self and the AIDS Committee and CMHA North Van District. They coordinate services to do reach out to individuals who are living unsheltered and rough, which includes the people that you're speaking about. So generally what has been looked at as we do needs assessments for those individuals is that very few people would actually say they prefer to live on the streets. What they say is that the services that they would require to find a home are not in existence at this time. So there's often some really significant barriers that include mental health issues and addiction issues, things where for them to actually reach a point where they can be homed, they need to have access to the supports and services and treatment that they may require. So I would say that the percentage of people who would actually say, I don't want a home is fairly low, if not zero. But most people would say that what they see in the community is not necessarily what they need to actually reach that goal.
Does that answer your question, Bonnie?
Yeah, I guess, and I think you guys are doing a great job. It's kind of like an endless job, but that was my question too. Yeah, I just really kind of wondered because, I think we in the community just say, there's homeless. And we don't really even recognize or understanding, how much work you guys are putting into it. So I really appreciate it.
So Harriet, if I could just add to that, I think it's an important factor that your group needs to understand. So the real difficulty has been money, really, to be quite honest with you. We took a huge chance. $1.8 million had to be used in reserves in the last year. We went back to the municipalities and asked for an additional 556,000, which was 1% on the, 0.5% on the tax rate of the city of North Bay to try and find the money to finally finish Northern Pines. And we're at that point now. So phase 3, which is the 24 units, will take the place of the low barrier shelter, which was designed originally to be temporary. The low barrier shelter, which houses 16 now, provides no service.
Yeah.
And they're in at 8 o'clock, by 8 o'clock at night, and they're back on the street by 8 o'clock in the morning. The whole plan was phase 3 with the 24 beds and supportive services inside the door to help those people that just, quite frankly, Harriet, they don't know what they're doing. They're many of them are so consumed with drug addiction and all these other problems that are out on the streets that they're aimless. They just wander, right? And that's what we're seeing in our communities. And it's not, I think it's important to understand that this is going on all over the province. Like it's huge in some of the Northern Ontario communities, Thunder Bay and Kenora, how they're trying to deal with these problems. And it's tremendously, personally, tremendously sad for me to watch it unfold the way it has.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Bonnie, or sorry, Debbie.
Oh, I see Chris has his hand up. Do you have something to add to that, Chris?
Sorry, Chris.
No, it's okay. It was just to raise the point that, if you sit back in your armchair and try and think, what would be the best option? The best option would be something like a transition house where you bring people off the street, gradually stabilize their accommodations and try and get them into something more permanent. And as easy as a concept as that is, North Bay and the Pines property on Chippewa Street, and Catherine confirmed this, but I give Catherine and Mark a lot of credit for this. Their relationship, their discussions, their persistence with the ministry. Northern Pines on Chippewa Street is a pilot project province-wide. Is that not correct?
Yes, for sure. There's no question about that. So a lot of the other municipalities are starting off where we are ready to occupy and occupying, and other ones are just getting into the planning stages of transitional housing. The other piece that this community is doing, which is different than a lot of other ones, is trying to bring in health services to help these individuals who are unwell to get stabilized. So that's one of our main objectives right now, is trying to partner with health agencies because we don't run health services. We're not a health service organization. Despite paramedic services, it's a one-off, but it's not our mandate to deliver health services in the social services sector.
Has the hospital returned your emails yet?
Yeah, we're having good conversations with the hospital and some of our other healthcare partners. So we're on the right path of just trying to sort things through. So we'll keep doing that.
Okay, go ahead, Bonnie, or Debbie, sorry.
Well, that's perfect. Thanks very much. That was kind of my, the way that I was going to lead into my question was, you know, how closely linked homelessness and addictions are. I mean, certainly mental health as well. But so my question was, you can't just put a Band-Aid on the homelessness without addressing the root cause, which in often cases addictions, and whether anything was being done about that. So I think you've touched on that, and I'm glad to hear that there's something in the works, or at least attempts.
Yeah.
I was a caseworker for the ODSP office for many years, so I'm very familiar with this type of clientele, and it's extremely challenging. And I am just so proud of what my city is doing to at least try to fix the problem. So thank you, and your efforts are noticed and certainly welcomed. I'm wondering also if there's anything being done about what we were all made aware of, how other cities were sending their problem clients to North Bay because we have facilities for them. Is that still an issue, or what's happening there?
Yeah, I can touch that one for you. So it's a little bit of it's an interesting concept that's talked about a lot. When I first arrived in the work, it was really apparently obvious that that was the thought of the community, that people are sending people to North Bay from everywhere else and on the bus, etc. It's really not a fact, to be honest with you. It's no different than as being people going off to, you know, Sudbury or Barrie or Toronto or Ottawa. People migrate in this population. That's what they do. They're transient. So there is a large percentage of individuals that are from North Bay and Nipissing District. There are always going to be a transient group that flow through. So I'm glad you asked the question, but that's just something we can't avoid with homeless individuals. They're going to move. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
So just to add to that, Harriet and Debbie, you know, our pit count made that extremely prevalent. The majority of people have been basically in and out of homelessness for the last 3 years and have lived in the community, whether it's Sturgeon Falls or it's Mattawa, and part of the problem, I think, and it became more prevalent once I listened to discussions in Toronto last week, that people will move from the rural areas in a region to the larger core centers looking for service. And that was really noted in the region of Waterloo. And they have a new pilot project underway whereby they've gone to their homeless people and said 68% would actually move out of encampments inside cities if in fact there was an established, really tiny house organization, somewhat outside of the community, and we're kind of torn. We've had a lot of discussions about whether that makes sense in our area. I don't agree with it. I'll be quite honest with you. You're only, it's like a Band-Aid on a really nasty situation. People need supports, and they need that personal help, I believe.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Mark, because this group, as you know, we are very active in trying to keep our communities clean and litter-free through Clean, Green, Beautiful. And the one thing that really breaks our spirits and hearts is when we come upon these encampments. It breaks our hearts, it breaks our spirits. It's really hard for us, you know, to get the manpower required to clean those encampments up. And then as soon as you get one of them cleaned up, another one pops up, or, you know, it's like trying to drain the ocean with a teaspoon or something. It's very disheartening. And I've often wondered if we had at least an established area in town where there were some kind of portable tiny houses or something that all included lots of garbage cans with them, because it's so disheartening to see those encampments. It breaks my heart. I love this city so much, and to see those encampments, as even if you're just passing through on the bypass, that's all you see. And I understand what you're saying about, you know, maybe it's not the right answer for these tiny homes or portable homes, but my God, there's got to be something we can do about the encampments.
That's not a question, but Chris, did you want to say something about that?
Sorry.
No, Deb, that's great. Because I think it is kind of a question. So,
yeah, and no, sorry, Debbie, but thanks, Harry. I really just was going to talk to the previous point. In previous years, the point in time count has just been anonymous numbers of homelessness counted up in the city without really identifying who they are, where they're coming from, how long they've been here.
yeah.
Ria can confirm this, but I believe this is the first year point in time will actually be attaching names to them, so we can try and identify, you know, how long have people been here, where have they come from. Understood there's a transient nature to them, the homeless, but there are other factors such as the North Bay Regional Health Center, which has an emphasis on mental health, that, you know, people come to the community from all over Northern Ontario. They're stabilized, and because they're close to physicians and medications, they stay on. So there is a sense that we have a disproportionate number of people in the community for various reasons. And there were, I'll call them anecdotes, but if you talk to the people who encountered it, who saw situations where people were very specifically given bus tickets in the North Bay, they were calling to see if they could move people into our area because we were receiving press about the homeless shelter. There has been a sense that some level of the increase is because we're being seen to doing well and have a leading project like Northern Pines. You know, I don't think things will be completely balanced until all communities have comparable facilities, but certainly we're making significant efforts in the right direction with strong financial support from the province.
Okay. Can I just throw something in here? I had a conversation with Brian Eade from the Gathering Place, and I think he was involved with the warming center, and he told me something that really stayed with me for a while, and that is that some of the people who are homeless, many want a sense of direction, you know, that want to have a sense of purpose and an opportunity to feel connected. the community and so Brian asked me for a toolkit. As you know, I'm the chair of Clean Green Beautiful North Bay. And so he hasn't got a lot of people going out with him, but he's got some of the clients that were at Northern Pines working with him to do pickups. And I thought that was an interesting thing. And also talked about, was there an opportunity to create a garden? And there was interest that his clients are saying, we want to do something. We're just sitting around doing nothing. And I just wonder what you would say to that. Is there?
I know at the Northern Pines, when we're up and running, that we will have programming there that'll include, things for these individuals to participate in and contribute to community. There's some going back and forth right now. We're seeing some good neighborship happening with the school, for example, the secondary school, interacting with, I think there's been some baking and things like that over the time period. There's been some donations of things from community groups to Northern Pines, so that collaboration is building where it didn't exist a few years ago.
That's good.
The community is changing, in my opinion. It was very cold towards providing services to the homeless a few years ago. And now, or through time, through pandemic, through groups like yours, we're seeing the sensitivity larger than it is just with your group, that there's more growth with respect to compassion in the community and how individuals all need to be treated with respect and dignity. And we all have different needs and priorities. And I think that's changing from a community perspective. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And the things that Brian's talking to you about are important items. And that's definitely part of the programming that will occur at Northern Pines. Gathering Place has a 3-year contract with DSAB to provide a warming center for the next 2 more years, plus this one that they just did. So that's in place. They may not want to do it at Chippewa next year. We're not sure, but they definitely are in a contract with us to continue the services. So that.
Well, Brian and I were talking about the one thing that's lacking in our community gardens.
Yes.
And there's a lot of property around that Northern Pines area. And we thought, and he said there was an interest with many of his clients to put their hands in the soil.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been talking about this and trying to see where that we might take this. And so lo and behold, a business in town who has plants offered free trees, shrubs, and perennials and plantings to beautify that area if possible. And I'm busy. I haven't had a chance to really chat to anybody and know what's the right direction or recourse to move in that direction. But I think that's something that we get involved in all kinds of things like that, tree planting and so on and so forth. And it does give you a sense of belonging, aliveness, and connection. Mm-hmm. And I would love to know if there's an interest in helping us work towards that. Mm-hmm. I know I've got a window here till mid-June to take all of what is left of these plantings and put it somewhere. Mm-hmm.
I would agree with you, Harriet. So now's the time to do it. So we would just have to work with the developer, with Crisis Center for Programming, and you can coordinate that through our team.
Okay.
Yeah. So
who am I going to contact then?
Rhea, who would be the best contact for that internally in yourself, or would it be
probably you can probably connect with me directly, Harriet, and then
okay.
we'd need to also speak to, as Catherine said, to the Crisis Center, because the Crisis Center is the operator for they are the organization that is working with the actual individuals at Northern Pines. And I know that this is a plan of theirs, is to actually work from that perspective. But we will also need to speak to the individual who actually owns the land to make sure that that's something that's okay with him as well.
Okay, can I connect with you then and bring Brian in on this piece?
You can. I would say that probably we need to bring the Crisis Center in sooner rather than later as well.
All right.
And then we need to find out whether or not the developer is okay with us adding to the land. I think that there has been indications that he would be fine with that in the past when we've talked about the programming, but we want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
And so
Okay.
just work through Rhea then, Harriet, and we'll coordinate that community gardens of some sort. And there's lots of land there. And it was one of the attractions of that property. I've talked to Jimmy about it quite a bit in terms of, we have a name. Donna has an interest in this as well. I know she's shaking her head. So, and the land there is available. Jimmy is he's a very compassionate developer for North Bay. So he would definitely be interested. He has expressed it before about the need to keep people busy on the site and not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. So you have the right audience. So connect to Rhea. She'll get us the right players at the table. And I have heard nobody say anything about no to anything of such a community garden at Chippewa. So that's all doable. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. This has just been
Yeah.
wonderful. We've got 10 minutes left. Maybe we could get some volunteers from our group if there's some help that's needed to plant those plants. Okay, with the clients. I'll put the request out and see where it goes. Okay.
Let Rhea know when you're ready. Yep.
Go ahead. So who's next, Bonnie?
I have another question. I know there's the Elmwood Hub run through the Children's Aid for children and certainly Out Loud. Are they outliers? That's not really part of social services. Are you guys interfacing between kids that are coming out of at-risk situations and then all of a sudden at 18 they're dropped and then you guys pick them up as, you know, if there's addictions or mental health? Because I think there's a huge potential there to protect those kids or get them streamed into something that would help them before they become homeless, you know, that group of kids. I don't mean all those kids that are in that area. I just know that those two hubs are working with youth, you know, so is that something that you interface with, talk about, including the hospitals, you know, is there something, because I think that that's a huge potential there maybe to help protect some people to not feel so alone once they're out in the world.
Do you mean on the Chippewa side or just generally?
I think just generally through social services, you know, are those kids, you know, what usually once they're 18, there is not really a lot of services for them, but they've already, you know, developed addictions or some mental health, and then you guys pick them up. Is there some kind of interface that you guys are aware of what's coming out from 18 years old?
Yeah, there's not a formal process in place for a handoff, for example, or anything like that, but there are services in place in community, like the Crisis Center runs a youth program, and there are other services out there. Out Loud has been in touch with our organization, as I know they have with North Bay as well, just to share what they do as a service and to come in, and they've spoken to all of our staff in an all staff meeting, just to share what they do and so to keep those connections going. But there isn't an actual formal collaboration. There's still a lot of work to be done in the system, and that would definitely be one area as well. And the hospital, we do have we work with the Ontario Health Team. We have a table we sit at ourselves and we chair called Housing and Health. And at that table, we bring in all of our different partners and we work on different, right now we're working on Northern Pines as the top priority, but there's a room at that table for conversations like you just raised. So yeah.
Ingrid Peterson, do you want to unmute, please? You have a question? Oh, she disappeared. Okay.
I can add just a little bit to that also, that the province and the federal government have prioritized youth as one of the populations that for looking at homelessness specifically, but prioritizing youth homelessness, specifically kids that are moving from care into adulthood. The Crisis Center has been working through their futures residents, which I think was what Catherine was referring to put processes into place that actually catch the youth before they actually age out of care, so that there is a plan in place as well. So there are plans underway currently that are fitting in with all the other planning that we're doing around homelessness as well.
There's a question here. Thank you, Rhiannon. There's a question here about a speaker we had. It was Brent Kalinowski on safety and well-being, community safety and well-being. And are you working in cooperation with the city? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes, yeah.
So, is there a plan coming? I wonder if that's on the agenda tonight. Somewhere I heard that there is a council, is there some form of safety and well-being coming to be approved at council tonight? Or an idea put forward by Rod Biltz? I don't know. Can any of the councilors comment?
Can't, quite frankly, Harriet, Rod has been at probably, I think, almost every council meeting over the last 3 or 4 months with the new council, and he's come up with a number of ideas. He actually has been in contact with Catherine. There's been a number of discussions about what DSAB and the support system is doing in the community. It's good. It's good that individuals actually take an interest, but at the same time, I think it's hugely important to understand what's being done in the community, and often there are all kinds of rumors floating around about certain things, and some press releases actually disappointing that the police chief suggested we were going to turn the homeless people out of the low barrier shelter, when in fact we had an alternative in phase 3 once that's up and developed. But if I could just for a second, I want to go back to Debbie's comment about the work you people are doing in the community and how important that is. Don't give up, Debbie. Don't feel defeated, because it's absolutely important to have a clean city, without question. And I know, we see it all. We know what's going on. I follow it all on Facebook, and the work you people are doing is fantastic. I can tell you that there is a general change in the mayor's office. And I'll be very honest with you. There is not an appetite to put up with encampments inside the city of North Bay, and I agree with that. If in fact, and we had that circumstance develop last week at Thompson Park, we had it develop at the Canadian Tire adjacent to their garden center last week. Those encampments will not be allowed to take place on public land. And I agree with that. And one of the things that people need to recognize, Supreme Court decision, which came out about probably 4 or 5 months ago, talked about the ability of municipalities and organizations providing shelter. Well, we provide shelter. The shelter is there for people. They don't need to live in encampments. They don't need to throw garbage all over the place. They don't need to interfere with vehicle traffic at intersections. This kind of stuff is just not, it's not what I would consider appropriate in an advanced community. So don't give up. We're going to, this is going to get straightened around, I believe, to a certain extent, but you're doing a heck of a job, and it's certainly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just mention to you that this isn't being done by one group, that we have delivered 3,000 clean, green, beautiful bags to community, and there's organizations all over the place helping, and our group has always been involved, and we just led the charge. That's basically it. Chris, we have time for one more question.
Well, sure. So just to confirm that Brent Kalinowski's work, there is an ad hoc council committee that will be, I expect it'll be approved at council this evening. It really just brings together a number of council members to sit and review and discuss a number of the issues that, DSAB addresses on an ongoing basis. I'm not sure what funding, if any, will be set aside for them. If the discussion is taking place with DSAB through Catherine, and I understand it is, then I expect any real outcomes from that council committee will be implemented through the DSAB. I don't see the city allocating significant amounts of money to duplicate services that essentially are already provided through DSAB. And I'll leave Catherine to comment on a little bit, but that motion will be before council this evening. I expect it will be supported.
I think you covered it, Chris. I think that covers it well.
Okay, we're going to have to stop and I get to say the last word. And I just want you to know that as community members, we really do care. And we have to recognize the human in everybody. And if there's something we can do to help somebody feel connected and like they belong here too, even if they haven't got a home, that they can give back as well. I really believe that we have this opportunity to raise the morale and the spirit of our community with everybody, and just keep working towards that. And thank you for all that you're doing. It's very complex. I have to go back and watch this video just to catch up on all of this. But I want to thank the Living Fit members as well for your great questions. They're always interesting. And thank you for your contribution as well. So have a great day, everybody. And I will be calling Ria or Rianne. Ria. Okay, Ria. I'll be contacting you today or tomorrow, Ria.
Okay.